good morning. Happy Monday, PSW staff, clients, friends. We have our friends joining us for Film Scoring Monday. We look at a scene, I take out the music. We do this whole thing every week. It's a great exercise. You guys become, we've been doing it for years, and you guys just never cease to amaze me. So I'm very proud of the work that we've been doing. Good thing there's plenty of movies out there because there's no shortage of material. Because we could do television shows and we'll have fun, a lot of fun with more things. But I really want to get you guys into present day, because we've been doing a lot of older ones. Pride and Prejudice, period movies. Once Upon a Time in America, period movie. Pirates before that. So let's get back into 2019. That's still a few years ago, but let's get current and let's get into present day. So today we're going to look at the Whodunit movie, Knives Out. I said whodunit. That's a term, who done it, and what do you think that means? It means, well, who did it, right? It's a murder mystery usually, going back to Agatha Christie. Other people did that, but she was very, she was like the king of that, or the queen of that rather. So it's American movie, mystery film by Rian Johnson. He's an American filmmaker, and Brick was his big debut, 2005, and also did some Breaking Bad, directed some of those episodes, and then Looper. So this got him an Academy Award nomination, though, Best Original Screenplay. So he's an auteur, writer-director. We've talked about auteurs before. So Knives Out is, it's a Radiohead song. So that's what, even though it doesn't have anything to do with the band, that's what he got the idea from. It's a $40 million budget, because it's in a big mansion and A-list celebrities, stars, but it makes about 300 million, over 300 million. So I know there's going to be sequels and all that stuff, and it all kind of surrounds the death of the patriarch, who is Christopher Plummer, because this movie opens with his death, and then we have to figure out, and he had he was a very rich, successful writer. And had all these kids, and they had kids, and it's kind of about a family, family in a big mansion. It's a lot of fun. And so, and then Daniel Craig, for some reason, has a southern draw in this, but I think Ryan said that he wrote it, the character, before casting it, with kind of a Foghorn Leghorn kind of draw, which is comical. So he's the detective brought in to solve this whole thing. Music's by Nathan Johnson, Ryan's cousin. So it's good to be related to a director or somebody he can put you to work. He's done some other. He's born in 1976, American film composer, but he's also director and a producer, and was in some bands. Did Don John, which is a really nice soundtrack that maybe we'll look at. This is interesting. We're going to score the opening scene, not really the credits, but it's the very, very beginning of it. It's a little spooky, but it's not, because first I'm going to show you without the music, and then, as we've seen before, when there's no music, you're just kind of waiting for something. It's just kind of like sound, Foley, and it's just kind of like not as dramatic, and then when you add the music, it's terrifying. And we'll listen to it. But first, let's just look at the scene, the very short scene that I want you to come score. So just pretty simple scene. I mean, it's kind of creepy with the big mansion. The dog is running. You know, you're in a creepy environment in this big house, and the maid servant is getting ready. I cut it right before she's gonna find Christopher Plummer, the dad. She's gonna find him dead on the sofa, and that's when the title card comes in. But just silence. What do you think was there? For those of you that have seen it, maybe you remember. Those of you that haven't, I hope you're thinking, if you were the composer or the music supervisor, what do you think would work for this? You know, spooky, scary, but you have endless possibilities. That's why I like to do it. Sometimes I like to show you the scene first without any music, because then it's like, oh my gosh, either that's very exciting or it's terrifying, because it could be anything. You know, we talked about a blank page being something very exciting or something full of anxiety, because there's endless possibilities, but then it's like, well, you got to choose one. And you could just keep watching the scene over and over. So what Nathan Johnson, the composer, did was did a string quartet, wrote a string quartet in G minor. I don't think he orchestrated this, and a lot of what's interesting about the score is, or the opening thing, is the counterpoint. We're going to look at it and look at the score. Sounds well. See, we know counterpoint, we know Bach. It doesn't really sound like Bach, but I mean, we'll talk about who it sounds like. So he's going to use a string quartet, which kind of not classes it up, but I think it's really effective opening music. So why don't we take a look at the scene with this score? So like I said, string quartet. Quartet meaning four, two violins, viola, and cello. That's the basis of a string quartet. That goes back to about Haydn. We did a whole class on Haydn, my mom's favorite composer. You know, he was one of the biggest composers right around Mozart's time of the classical era. That's when string quartets really became famous, because even today, as we've seen today, the string quartet band has never gone out of style. I just hired a string quartet for my brother's wedding coming up in a few months, and you know, it's a safe bet that it's going to be a full sound, even though there's only four people, and a lot of famous string quartet, you know, groups play together a lot. So okay, so that now we know what a quartet is and a little bit of a history of a quartet. What's good about this? We're going to listen to, or what musical elements do we hear? Let's listen to it again. And I'm going to show you the score and see if you can follow along. The little red square boxes are going to help you follow along. It's a little tricky. You know, a lot of times what's easy is to look at the bottom, look at the cello, look at the bass, and if you can follow the bass, because sometimes the violins and strings are going to be doing some, you know, crazy little tremolo stuff. But if you get lost, I have the little box there. But also just a nice little way to is to look at the bass, the bottom line bass part, the cello part. So let's look at the score, and if you want to follow along, please do. If you want to close your eyes and just listen to what we're listening to, that's great too. So let's take a look at it with the score. So the opening starts off slow because we're going to get on this train. We're going to get going on this train. What does it sound like to you? So it's not Bach. And plus string quartets really weren't written. It does sound Baroqueish, but as we've talked about with Haydn's after Bach. So, but it doesn't sound like Haydn. It's just using that string quartet. What does it sound like? Not Frank Stallone. I don't think it sounds like Frank Stallone. What does it sound like? We've talked now. If you remember the Beethoven class, we remember that crazy fugue that Beethoven wrote. It was about 20 minutes, and he wanted it to include it as one of the final movements of his string quartet. And his publisher or editor said it's way too crazy. You're gonna have to do something else. You can keep it as its own piece, and that's fine. And he did, way ahead of its time. It reminds me a lot of Beethoven's fugue, but also there was another composer that we looked at who did crazy string quartet music, very scary music, and because we made the connection between Bernard Herrmann and I'm talking about Bartók. We looked at Bartók a few months ago. Remember Bartók's String Quartet number 4? I mean, this is 1928. Just listen to some of this. And we kind of thought, well, this sounds like a rock band playing, only it's a string quartet. It's a classical piece, but it's like a rock band playing. You know, I mean, in the 20s. I mean, this piece was 1928. This Bartók piece. Beethoven's is even earlier, obviously. That's a little less rhythmic than Bartók. Bartók's really, I mean, 20th century composer. He's very much into, using the bows of the violins and the cellos to really crank out, just like a guitarist, just like Jimi Hendrix and Kurt Cobain would just really use just strumming it. Bartók's doing that too. Nathan Johnson's doing that a little bit too. I mean, because it's a very unsettling piece, isn't it? Oh, why is that? Well, it's not the same tone throughout the whole piece. So we said it starts slow. There's little elements of it. There's pizzicato, which, where you pluck it. That comes in a little later. There's tremolo, where you go back and forth. The dynamics are really key, right? Very soft, very loud, very aggressive. That really makes it dramatic. That gives it a lot of, well, maybe everything, because if you were to listen to a demo of just a string quartet MIDI playing it, it probably would sound very mechanical, because none of the dynamics are the feel is there. This string quartet's really playing with a lot of feel. So, having said that, I want you to find a piece for string quartet that could be in place of this. Or string ensemble. That's fine. Let's make it string quartet or string ensemble, but something scary string-like. But let's not do Psycho, because that's too famous. Okay? I know. I know. I'm doing this because I love you, because I want you to grow. I just don't want us to get too complacent in this, because with the curriculum, I want to build on these things. So string ensemble or string quartet that could be scary. Yeah, it's easy. Just Google that. I told you how to get the answer. There's a lot of composers that have done this. Schubert wrote some very great string quartets. If you want to look at Schubert, Philip Glass did some great string quartets. We know Philip Glass. If you want to find another Bartók, I mean, there's tons of string quartet, but scary string quartet. You look at Ravel and Debussy, that's very pleasant and beautiful sounding, but that's not going to be, this is a scary, lack of a better word, horror movie. This is kind of a thriller, even though there's comedic parts in it. We need to set up, and this is of course the the opening music credits, always the most important. That gives you the tone of what is this movie going to be? Oh, it's jolting, and it's very scary. Just with 4 string players, very scary. Also, the harmony is very scary because it's in minor, and there's a lot of tritones. We've talked about that with Bernstein, with the raised fourth, the tritone that sounds very, in dissonance. There's some dissonance, but it mostly just stays in G minor to D to C. The chords are pretty basic, but the orchestration and the counterpoint makes it very complex. But when we break it down just chord-wise, it's simple, but it's a very complex, written. The writing is very complex. Sorry, I'm just in mid-thought sometimes, so my sentences don't come out, and I get excited about this stuff. So get it to me by tomorrow. We're going to have a great week. 4th of July is coming up next week, so we'll make it a little bit patriotic this week. Okay, so good luck. Let me know if you have any questions, and see you tomorrow. Okay, bye.